So I think it's guaranteed at this point that Episode 3 Heresy is a massive dub for Bungie. Without a doubt, this content release has been the best non-expansion release in a while. Looking back on it, the last bit of seasonal content that had me enjoying the game this much was probably Season of the Seraph, with everything that happened with Rasputin and all the story implications that season had leading up to Lightfall. Now, if Lightfall had hit on a similar level, that would have been great. But let's get back on topic, shall we? Today we're talking Heresy, mainly the story and why it has me so excited for Frontiers, and I'll also cover gameplay stuff and the things I didn't quite like and everything in between. So let's start at the very beginning, shall we? Heresy Act 1 launched following easily some of the worst non-expansion content in the form of episode Echoes and Revenant. Now, although the story elements within Revenant weren't as bad as Echoes, delivery-wise it wasn't all that great, with the fact you could blitz through the content in an hour and then have to wait 6 weeks for the next act to drop with the next part of the story, which at that point I had already forgotten what we did in the last act, making the story itself feel very disconnected. So to have Heresy return to weekly story drops and to have the drops actually be meaningful was a great change. For those who don't know, within just the first act alone, we had the death of Eris Morn, who was a few seconds later revealed to us as the player to be safe in her new throne world, a meeting with Savathun to tell us to stay out of her way with the family matter going on between her, Xevious and Oryx's Dreadnought, and to cap it all off with in Act 1 we had the return of Oryx, the Taken King, but this time without the memories of us killing him, or really anything that happened, I want to say, post him killing Arca and becoming the Taken King. Great to see they learnt from the Forsaken expansion and didn't show Eris dying in the marketing for the episode, but moving on to Act 2, we got Eris's return and introduction to her throne world and a little cute cutscene between her and the Drifter. One of, if not the best cutscenes in Destiny history, giving us a look at not only what Eris plans to do with Oryx in his current state, but also the first look at Xevious and her throne world that she technically no longer has access to. Then we capture Oryx within Eris's throne world, and throughout all of this start to get hints about Oryx not being the one in control of the new taken enemies that we see throughout the Dreadnought. He even confirms that it's neither Xevious or Savathun in control, so that's something to think about later. But are you able to see a pattern where every week at least something vital to the story actually happens, and it's not just the first and last weeks that end up mattering? Now, as I'm writing this script, we are about to start the second week of Act 3, so it should tease how this is all supposed to wrap up nicely for either the next expansion or the Rite of the Nine event, if there are in fact story implications that end up connecting the Nine in some way. But underneath all the major story beats I just covered, one has remained a big mystery. Who is in control of the brand new taken enemies? Because it ain't Oryx, Xevu or Savathun, so someone or something has entered the stage and is seeking to take control of the Taken Throne that we left vacant all the way back in the Taken King expansion. Now, if you want to learn more about this new enemy, I would highly recommend going over to My Name is Bife's channel, as he has some amazing videos covering the little bits of lore that surround this new enemy that could potentially become a future threat. Now that we've got the majority of the story elements out the way for the time being, let's talk about gameplay itself. Does the gameplay elements also meet the same level of excitement that the story does? Well, for me personally, not so much. Now don't get me wrong, having the Dreadnought back is very cool, and the Nether and Court of Blades are fun activities to run, but as a person who played through the Taken King expansion, going back to these new and old areas isn't as exciting. But what I will say I did enjoy very much, and also hate at the same time, was the new exotic quest for Barrow Diat, which was what I spent the majority of my playtime this episode unlocking. Now, the Derealized mission is top notch, a very good mission, loved the confusing jumping puzzles, and the cool mechanics within the mission itself, and loved hunting down the taken fragments around the different areas of the Dreadnought to upgrade the weapon. But the thing I hated about this quest was the Catalyst steps. Now, I didn't have it nearly as bad as other people did, but to sum it up for those who haven't done these quests, the first two were kind of chill. If I remember correctly, you had to just go and do the Nether with Barrow Diat equipped or run Court of Blades, then just rank up with the Shaping Slab and you were pretty much done. The worst part would be, one, if you weren't at the right rank at the Shaping Slab, you couldn't progress the quest, which would put a huge pause button on the quest itself, and two, some steps required you to interact with these terminals within certain areas of the Dreadnought. Now you might be thinking, okay, so load into the Dreadnought destination, go to the terminals, right? Nope, because the only way to access the Dreadnought is through the Nether activity, which randomly puts you into 3 different areas of the Dreadnought, and you can't even run to the other locations freely because there are massive taken walls blocking your path, and if you don't get the area you need to run through the activity again to try and get the correct area. But that's not even the worst part, because after you get the correct area, of which there are 5 in total, you then have to hope and pray that the correct secret appears in that area, because you need to complete these specific secrets to get these specific access codes to interact with the specific terminals in the different parts of the Dreadnought. Then and only then are you able to interact with the terminals to complete the part of the quest, and to make matters worse, the game doesn't even tell you what secrets you need to do or where the terminals are. Now the only good thing about this is that if someone has gone through those painful steps, they're able to interact with the terminals and open the necessary portals for other people, which is what I ended up having to rely on, and thankfully there were plenty of people on LFG willing to help out. Shout out to all of those who did that, thanks a bunch. Also, sometimes I lucked out and had done the necessary secrets on accident, which was a huge win. With that said, that was the only real downside to this episode. Everything else was pretty darn good. We even got an update to Guardian Games, which hadn't seen a true update aside from a new weapon and paid cosmetics in what felt like forever, so that was nice. Now heading into the new expansion, I'm very excited to see if Bungie is able to keep this style of storytelling. Having some kind of meaning to each story beat is great, and I hope this doesn't get lost as they now seem to be going with a non-linear story for their next expansion. Minor exotic quest annoyances aside, this episode has been really great. Fingers crossed it doesn't get bad now, because that would be pretty ironic. And here's hoping that even though the story elements weren't that great in the other episodes of Revenant and Echoes, that doesn't mean the future stories following on from where those stories ended are impacted negatively. And that's all I have to say about Heresy and this year of content generally. All in all, I'm excited, and I'm really now just waiting to see what Bungie reveals next for Project Frontiers. So, hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, remember to leave a like and subscribe to the channel, as I'd very much appreciate it, and I'll catch you all in the next one.